From VOA Special English, this is the economics report. China and Taiwan may disagree on political issues, but on Thursday, they reached an agreement to protect investors. The agreement is important because China and Taiwan do not have diplomatic relations. China claims Taiwan as its territory, but Taiwan has been self-governing since 1949. The sides agreed to open new areas to investment and to inform the other within 24 hours if an investor is arrested. Talks on the deal have lasted 2 years, but it has been slowed because of the different legal systems in the two areas. The Chinese and Taiwanese negotiators signed the agreements in Taipei. They set up a way to negotiate an arbitration mechanism. The deal also will open new areas of business and industry to investment. Chinese interests had held back investment because of fears of a change in Taiwan's government. Market experts expect Chinese investors to buy shares of Taiwanese companies listed on Taiwan stock exchange. Experts think high technology and travel industries will receive a lot of investment over the short term. Taiwanese share prices are considered undervalued, although companies are doing well. Jack Huang is a lawyer in Taipei. He says China will buy stocks and seek partnerships with Taiwanese companies, especially in technology. Jack Huang says a lot of investment will come from Chinese companies or the Chinese government wealth fund. He says Taiwan's companies are mainly financially sound, but the stock prices are not too high. Taiwan stocks, he said, are undervalued. Taiwan's economy is over $430 billion. Taiwan permits Chinese investors to buy directly into Taiwanese companies in 247 industries. They can also buy up to 10% shares in most companies. Experts in Taiwan says China wants to invest in the island to support efforts at political reunification. The Nationalist Party, or KMT, of the former leader of China, Chiang Kai-shek, went to Taiwan at the end of the country's civil war in the 1940s. Today, Taiwan has several political parties. The main opposition party held power for 8 years, starting in 2000. President Ma Ying-jeou of the KMT has sought closer economic ties with the mainland. In 2010, China invested $1 billion in Taiwan after a deal that year reduced export taxes for both sides. Transcripts, MP3s, and PDFs of their reports are online at voaspecialenglish.com. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Valerian. From VOA Special English, this is the Economics Report. Pressure for financial reform has been building in Europe. In June, the financial services company Moody's Investor Service reduced Spain's credit rating. The rating was cut from A3 to Baa3. That means that Moody's officials believe the credit risk of Spanish debt has moved from very low to moderate. The company said it acted because Spain is borrowing about $125 billion in rescue loans for its banks. Debt markets punished Spain by pushing up the interest rate on its long-term debt to about 6.8%. That increases Spain's borrowing costs and hurts its already troubled economy. Spain was not the only country to get downgraded by Moody's. Cyprus got the same treatment. Recently, American Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner spoke at the Council on Foreign Relations in Washington. He said the increase in borrowing costs for European countries like Spain means European officials must move quickly to avoid growing costs. In his words, if you wait to move in these things and you let the market get ahead of you, then you increase the costs of the solution and you make it harder to get there. Once you decide, he said, there is no argument for doing it slowly. Germany, Europe's largest economy, has been pushing for economic reform of moving toward Germany, Europe's largest economy, has been pushing for economic reform in the 17 countries using the euro. But German Chancellor Angela Merkel has argued that her country is unwilling to put money at risk unless banking reform is enacted throughout the Eurozone. But she warned that Germany's economic power was not unlimited. In early June, the European Commission proposed steps toward a common banking policy. The proposals include empowering nations to intervene when the banks are in trouble. But proposed changes may also bar support for failing banks. Some European leaders are pressing for an expanded European bailout fund. Germany has resisted providing new financial resources, but details of any deal with big European economies have yet to be decided. Europe's financial crisis is likely to be a major international issue in the weeks to come. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Valerian. From VOA Special English, this is the Economics Report. American Treasury. The World Economic Forum is an independent organization. Its job is to help businesses, governments, and civil society groups find ways to work together to improve the world. The 21st World Economic Forum on East Asia recently took place in Thailand. Organizers wanted to bring attention to the development of Southeast Asia. The event received extra attention because of the presence of Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi, the Burmese opposition leader, and a newly elected member of parliament. She traveled to Bangkok in her first foreign trip in over 20 years. Burmese President Thein Sein cancelled his appearance at a meeting shortly after her travel plans were announced. Klaus Schwab started what came to be called the World Economic Forum and serves as executive chairman. In opening comments, he praised a growing influence of Southeast Asian nations in the world economy and world political issues. In his words, when you look at the ASEAN region, you feel that here you have a region which is full of dynamism. He says the region becomes more and more a crucial factor in the world economy and world political context. Several government leaders were in Bangkok for the meeting. They included the President of Indonesia, the Prime Minister of Vietnam, and the Prime Minister of Thailand. The forum is a place to discuss issues affecting 10 members of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. In a speech, Thai Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra noted threats like the death crisis in Europe and climate change. But she also pointed to technological progress, democratic reforms, and new centers of economic growth as signs of hope. ASEAN nations are becoming increasingly important to the world economy. As a group, their economic activity is nearing $2 trillion. Southeast Asian economies are expected to grow more than 5% this year. That rate is higher than Europe or North America. World Trade Organization Director General Pascal Lamy also attended the meetings. He says Southeast Asia is doing better than other areas now, but he warned that a slowing world economy could create problems. He says he would expect the region to be more affected in the 2 or 3 years to come than it has been so far. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Valerian. From VOA Special English, this is the Economics Report. Facebook is the world's biggest social network. It has over 900 million users worldwide, and it reported $3.7 million in sales for last year. The company has been privately held since 2004. That was when Mark Zuckerberg and several classmates at Harvard University started Facebook as a business. But on May 18th, Facebook becomes a publicly traded company. That means the shares will be listed on the Nasdaq stock market and sold to the public. Interest in the stock kept building after Facebook announced details of its initial public offering, or IPO, earlier this year. The IPO will make billionaires of the company's founders, including Mr. Zuckerberg. Eduardo Chavrin, a Brazilian-born co-founder, has been strongly criticized for recently giving up his United States citizenship. By doing so, he will avoid a 15% tax on the value of his shares. He now lives in Singapore. Shortly before the trading started, Facebook told the Securities and Exchange Commission that it wanted to increase the number of shares being offered to over 420 million. The company had earlier said it planned to offer 337 million. The starting price was set at $38, also an increase. Some financial experts says Facebook could raise $16 billion, making it one of the biggest IPOs ever. Most of Facebook's revenue comes from online advertising, but the company also said it is backed to earn money from fees charged on the sales of virtual goods. These are digital products used in social games, not physical goods. Facebook says it sees important income coming from the new market, which could reach $14 billion by 2016. Not everyone is pleased. General Motors ended its advertising agreement with Facebook just before the stock began trading. The carmaker said it did not see results from millions of dollars spent on advertising with Facebook. And Facebook has been criticized for some recent business decisions. It offered $1 billion to buy Instagram, an application for sharing photographs. The deal requires government approval and has yet to be finalized. So, is Facebook worth the rise of the stock? That will be for investors to decide. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Valerian. From VOA Special English, this is the Economics Report. American Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner recently urged China to let the exchange value of its money rise. Mr. Geithner was among top officials from both countries who gathered in Beijing for the U.S.-China strategic dialogue. Their goal was to increase cooperation on security and economic issues. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton spoke as the meeting opened on May 3rd. She said the two sides were working to build a relationship so that both countries grow without unhealthy competition or conflict. She noted that nations must deal with issues of economics in a way that is not win or lose, or what she called zero-sum. Secretary Clinton also said that both the United States and China have to meet responsibilities to their own citizens and the international community. The value of China's money, the yuan, was among the economic issues discussed at the meeting. In early May, the exchange rate was over 6 yuan to the American dollar. The United States says China intervened in foreign currency markets to keep the exchange value of the yuan low. A lower value means Chinese exports are less costly than their competitors. Critics also say China is unfairly supports its industries with many government support. Last year, American trade deficit with China reached a record $295 billion. At the talks with American officials, Chinese Vice Premier Wang Qishan defended his country's money policy. He says China is moving at a measured rate to make its currency more flexible, and he urged the United States not to politicize economic issues. Mr. Wang also called on the United States to ease controls on high-technology exports and to increase Chinese access to financial markets. Mr. Geithner said China had moved toward a better way of valuing the yuan, but he said more reform was needed. He said a strong, more market-determined yuan will have strengthened economic reform goal of moving toward higher value-added production. Currency reform, says Mr. Geithner, also was important to China's financial system and to increasing customer demand at home. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Valerian. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Rice is an important part of many people's diets. Researchers from the Harvard School of Public Health in Massachusetts have released a report about rice. It shows that eating white rice increases the risk of type 2 diabetes. However, eating brown rice reduces the risk of the disease. Brown rice is a grain. The World Health Organization says more than 220 million people worldwide have diabetes. Type 2 diabetes results when the body cannot effectively use the sugar it produces. More than 39,000 men and 157,000 women took part in the study. They were asked about their diet and day-to-day activities as well as any pre-existing diseases. The study found that the people who ate 5 or much more servings of white rice per week had a 17% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. But those who ate 2 or much more servings of brown rice a week had an 11% reduced risk of getting the disease. Brown rice is a grain in its natural form. White rice results after it has been refined. It involves removing the outer cover, including the husk, grain, and germ. Only the inner white kernel is left. White rice is often enriched to replace some nutrients lost during the refining process. Jason is the lead writer of the report. He says the outer parts of brown rice slow down the work of the body's digestive enzymes on the starch in the rice. This means that the release of sugar into the bloodstream is lower after eating brown rice compared to white rice. A diet of foods that quickly release sugar into the bloodstream has been linked with a greater risk of type 2 diabetes. The exact reason for this is not known. Dr. Sun says less refined grains have more nutritional value than refined grains. He says replacing white rice with whole grains like whole wheat or barley could result in a 36% lower chance of developing type 2 diabetes. He says people should replace white rice and other refined carbohydrates with whole grains whenever possible. However, brown rice does not last as long as white rice because of the oil-rich layer of grain. That makes it less usable in poor communities. The International Rice Research Institute is working to develop kinds of white rice whose starch is released more slowly. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Valerian. From VOA Special English, this is the Health Report. World Suicide Prevention Day was September 10th. This year's observance was meant to bring attention to the differences among suicidal individuals and their situations around the world. The organizers also said that all over the world, people have something in common. They need to feel connected to others for good mental health. The organizers included the International Association for Suicide Prevention and the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization says that every year about 1 million people kill themselves. It says suicide is one of the top 3 causes of death among people between the ages of 15 and 44. Among people aged 10 to 24, suicide is the second leading cause of death after road accidents. Lonnie Berman is president of the International Association for Suicide Prevention. He points out suicide rates differ from countries to countries, as do common ways that people kill themselves. As a result, prevention efforts must fit with local needs. He says the main methods of suicide in developing countries have been pesticides, poisoning, and overdose. And there have been efforts to develop prevention programs to reduce the use and availability of pesticides. Mr. Berman says findings from agricultural areas of Sri Lanka, India, and China show promise. They show that programs are helping to limit access to these poisons. There are often clear warning signs before a suicide attempt. Lonnie Berman says individuals usually talk about the idea before they try it. Another warning sign is sudden increase in the use of drugs or alcohol. Warning signs also include the expressions of hopelessness or a sense of feeling trapped. Lonnie Berman says the risk of suicide can be more difficult to identify in children. They generally communicate more with other children than with adults. But the other children often do not understand the messages. As a result, when children speak of suicide, other children rarely report it. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Valerial. From VOA Special English, this is the Health Report. Many people have low amounts of iron in their blood, but pregnant women need extra iron for their own health and their baby's health. Iron is important to the development of a baby's brain and central nervous system. In poor countries, however, providing all pregnant women with iron supplements can be a financial issue. Some experts say giving supplements to babies after they are born is enough. Someone who disagrees is Peru Christian, a nutritionist at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health in Maryland. She and other scientists have been doing research in Nepal. She says their latest findings should settle any question about the value of making sure every pregnant woman receives iron supplement. Iron is a micronutrient. Micronutrients are important substances that are found in foods. Researchers first completed a study among poor women in Nepal 10 years ago. During pregnancy, some of the women received supplements containing iron and another micronutrient, folic acid. Ms. Hiền says that study showed supplements could improve child survival. Now the children are older. The researchers returned to Nepal and tested their neurological development. They found improved abilities among those whose mother had received iron and folic acid during pregnancy and for 3 months after. Another new study looks at the levels of vitamin D in babies. It says newborns with the lowest levels were twice as likely to develop respiratory infections as those with the normal levels of vitamin D. Vitamin D helps build strong bones and strengthen the body's defenses against disease. Evidence that the disease develops. The vitamin is commonly added to cow's milk and also found in supplements. Vitamin D is called the sunshine vitamin. The body naturally produces it from sunlight. Carlos Camargo from Harvard Medical School in Massachusetts and other researchers did the study. It followed more than 900 children until they were 5 years old. Dr. Camargo said the problem of vitamin D deficiency is not limited to countries with the least sun. There are low levels of vitamin D in people living in areas where there is a lot of sun. This is because people are spending more time indoors. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Valerian. From VOA Learning English, this is the health report. You wake up early one morning to prepare a meal to take to work, and then you forget it. Has this ever happened to you? Researchers say they now have proof that self-reported minor memory loss sometimes led to greater mental decline 6 years later. They reported the finding at a recent conference organized by the Alzheimer's Association. Rebecca Amarillo is a neuropsychologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. She found that people who worried about their memory were more likely to suffer a loss of mental ability. Her research showed such persons were likely to have a protein called beta amyloid in the brain. Beta amyloid is suspected of being at least partly involved in Alzheimer's disease. Evidence that the disease develops for an unknown period of time before doctors recognize it is leading to a new areas of study. It is called subjective cognitive decline. It involves people who sense that their memory and thinking skills are failing before others realize it. Experts want to inform the public that most people who worried about a mental decline do not develop dementia, the most common form of Alzheimer's. What they are experiencing is truly natural and normal aging. Dr. Ronald Peterson is a member of the Alzheimer's Association National Board. He says people should be tested if they fear they might have the disease. Evidence that the disease developed. He says doctors might ask patients about other issues like any medicines they are taking or whether they suffer from anxiety, depression, or stress. He says although things can cause changes in memory. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Valerian. From VOA Learning English, this is the health report. Living among trees, flowers, and other plants can fill your life with beauty. And if you are a woman, it might also help you live longer. Researchers found that women who live in homes surrounded by plants have lower death rates than women who live in areas with less greenery. The Harvard University School of Public Health reported the finding. Peter James is an expert there on epidemiology, or disease spread. He and his team looked at information from one of the largest and oldest investigations of women's health, the Nurses' Health Study, which began 40 years ago. It now has information on nearly 200,000 women. For the new study, the Harvard team looked at death rate records of more than 100,000 women between the years 2000 and 2008. Then they compared the women who lived among a lot of greenery, only among most vegetation and plants, to those who lived among the least green space. They found in that 8-year period, the women who lived among a lot of greenery had a 12% lower death rate than the other women. Researchers says women in greener areas spent more time with others, exercised more, and were exposed to less air pollution. For VOA Learning English, this is the last health report. From Learning English TV. But we are not going away. We will continue to bring you videos to help you learn American English. Go to learningenglish.voanews.com for more materials and look for past Learning English TV reports. I'm Caleb Babb. Thank you for watching and learning with VOA Learning English.